It's 1 in the morning. You're scrolling through updates from people you haven't spoken to in years. Promotions, weddings, new houses, the kind of milestones that look effortless in a photo. And there's that tightness in your chest again. The voice that says you're falling behind. But here's what that voice won't tell you. You're not behind. You just stopped running someone else's race. The anxiety you feel isn't about time. It's not even really about achievement. It's about visibility. You've internalized the idea that progress only counts if other people can see it. If it doesn't show up in a post, a title, or a milestone someone else recognizes, it doesn't feel real. So you measure yourself against curated snapshots, against people who are broadcasting their highlight reel while you're living in the unedited hours of your actual life. The problem isn't that you're moving slowly, it's that you're using the wrong yardstick. You're measuring depth with a tool designed for surface, and depth doesn't photograph well. It doesn't come with applause or a notification count. The work you're doing to rebuild your mental health doesn't have a launch date. Learning to set boundaries doesn't come with a promotion. Getting comfortable with who you actually are instead of performing who you thought you should be, that doesn't make it to the LinkedIn feed. But the world has taught you to distrust invisible progress. We live in a culture that equates worth with output, with proof, with something you can point to and say, "See, I'm not wasting my life." And when your growth doesn't look like everyone else's checklist, the doubt creeps in. You start wondering if you're falling behind, when in reality, you've just stopped performing. You've stopped optimizing your life for an audience that was never paying as much attention as you thought. There's a reason this feeling is so universal. In 1954, psychologist Leon Festinger introduced what he called social comparison theory. His research found that humans have a built-in drive to evaluate themselves by comparing their abilities and achievements to others. When we lack objective standards for measuring our own progress, we look sideways. We measure ourselves against whoever happens to be visible. That made sense in smaller communities. If you grew up in a village of 100 people, you had a limited reference group. You could see the whole picture. But now, your reference group is infinite. It's algorithmically curated. It's everyone who posts, everyone who shares, everyone who performs their best moment on the worst day of yours. And the algorithm doesn't show you the quiet, steady work. It shows you the highlight, the outcome, the moment that gets engagement. Festinger also found that people tend to compare themselves upward to those they perceive as better off. It's not a conscious choice, it's automatic. You don't scroll past someone's vacation and think, good for them. You scroll past and your brain files it away as evidence that you're not keeping up. And because you're mostly seeing upward comparisons, you're getting a distorted picture of where you actually stand. You're comparing your behind the scenes to everyone else's edited final cut. Here's the critical part. Festinger's work shows that these comparisons become more frequent and more painful when we feel uncertain about ourselves. When you're already doubting your path, your brain reaches for external validation. It looks for proof that you're doing okay, and the easiest proof to grab is comparison. But that's exactly when comparison becomes the least reliable. Because you're not looking for truth, you're looking for reassurance. And social media doesn't give you reassurance. It gives you more data points to feel behind on. This is why the anxiety doesn't go away when you achieve something. You hit the milestone, and the finish line just moves. Because the game was never about catching up. It was about performing progress in a way others could witness and validate. You didn't sign up to have your entire life be a public audition, but somewhere along the way, it became one. You started editing your experiences before you even finished living them, wondering how they'd sound if you had to explain them, how they'd look in a post, whether they were impressive enough to justify the time you spent on them. That's not self-reflection, that's rehearsal. And it's exhausting. The truth is, most of your real life won't make sense to an audience. It won't have a clean narrative. The month you spent staring at the wall trying to figure out what you actually want doesn't have a caption. The friendship you ended because it was draining you doesn't come with a press release. The career pivot you're still in the middle of doesn't have an inspiring before and after. And that doesn't make those things less important. It makes them yours. When you stop performing, people might not understand what you're doing. And that's the point. You're not behind. You're just no longer trying to win a game you never wanted to play. Chapter 2. Progress that doesn't announce itself. Real progress is often invisible. It doesn't compound in ways that are easy to track. You don't wake up one day and suddenly have boundaries. You wake up 100 days in a row and practice saying no. And most of those days feel like nothing happened. There's no scoreboard, no streak to screenshot. Just the quiet repetition of choosing yourself when no one's watching. The same goes for unlearning, for sitting with discomfort instead of numbing it, for letting go of the idea that you're supposed to be further along by now. That work doesn't show up on a resume. It doesn't earn you credibility in a room full of strangers. But it changes everything about how you move through the world. And the people who need to see it will see it. Not because you performed it, but because you became it. You're not behind. You're building a foundation that doesn't need an audience to hold weight. You've been tracking the wrong numbers, followers, titles, salaries, milestones that fit neatly into a timeline. But none of those measure whether you're living a life that feels like yours. They measure whether you're living a life that looks good from the outside. And those are not the same thing. What if you measured something else? How many days you felt aligned instead of anxious? How many conversations you had where you didn't edit yourself? How many times you chose rest without guilt? How often you walked away from things that didn't serve you, even when they looked good on paper? Those metrics don't translate well to social media, but they translate directly to the quality of your inner life. And that's the life you actually have to live. Here's the shift. Other people's timelines are none of your business, not because you should ignore them, but because their race has nothing to do with yours. You're not behind them. You're not ahead of them. You're just not running parallel. And the moment you stop trying to pace yourself against someone else's mile markers, you get to define what progress actually looks like for you. You're not behind. You're just finally running your own race. There's a specific kind of freedom that comes when you stop trying to make your life make sense to people who aren't living it. You stop bracing for judgment. You stop translating your choices into language that sounds defensible. You just do the thing. And then you do the next thing. And somewhere in that process, the gap between who you are in private and who you are in public starts to close. That's not because you became more impressive. It's because you became more honest. The irony is that the version of you that stops performing is often the version people connect with most. Because they're not meeting your highlight reel, they're meeting a person. Someone who's still figuring it out. Someone who doesn't have all the answers but has stopped pretending they do. That's not relatable because it's polished. It's relatable because it's true. You're not behind. You're present. And that's rarer than you think. Here's what you do. Pick one area of your life where you feel behind. Just one. Now ask yourself, who decided this timeline? Whose pace am I measuring against? Whose definition of success am I using? Write down the answer. Chances are, it's not yours. It's a mix of what you absorbed from family, culture, algorithm, expectation. And once you see that, you can start to separate it. Then ask a different question. If no one ever knew about this part of my life, what would I want it to look like? Not what sounds impressive. Not what fits the narrative. What would feel right to you? That answer is your actual North Star. That's the one you follow. This doesn't mean you ignore external goals. It means you stop letting external timelines determine your internal worth. You can want the promotion and also know you're not less valuable without it. You can celebrate someone else's milestone without turning it into evidence of your inadequacy. You can be exactly where you are and still be whole. Start today. One decision, one boundary, one moment where you choose what's true over what looks good. That's the shift. It's small, it's private, and it's the beginning of a life that doesn't need an audience to matter. It's 1 a.m. You're scrolling through the updates again. Promotions, weddings, houses. But this time, the tightness in your chest is quieter, because you know something now. Those snapshots aren't the full story. They're not even the real race. You've been running your own, quietly, without fanfare, and you're exactly where you need to be, not because you've arrived, but because you've stopped pretending the destination was somewhere outside yourself. You're not behind. You never were. You just stopped performing long enough to notice.